The death of Jaehaerys Targaryen the Conciliator and the questions regarding long-term succession left unresolved on his deathbed ensured that division was built into the very foundation of the reign of his heir Viserys I. This division was furthered by the political machinations of one Otto Hightower and the less than courtly manner in which the rogue Prince Daemon Targaryen would carry himself throughout the reign of his brother. A period of strife and uncertainty lay before the realm, providing the starkest of contrasts to what came before. It was in this incubation period that the lines between the Greens and Blacks were firmly drawn, and with it, setting the stage for one of the bloodiest wars in Westerosi history, the Dance of the Dragons. King Viserys I ascended to the throne a sprightly young man of 26, having already been married to Lady Aemma Arryn for 10 years. He inherited a kingdom in excellent condition, for his predecessor Jaehaerys had left behind a sterling reputation, which inspired the love of the commoners. Moreover, the royal coffers were overflowing as a result of the prudent policies of the old king. House Targaryen also possessed the highest amount of dragons they had ever owned prior to the doom of Valyria. In direct contrast to his predecessor, the Old King, Viserys was immediately nicknamed the Young King, and his gregarious nature inspired optimism in the smallfolk. A great tourney would be held in Maidenpool in 104 AC to celebrate King Viserys' accession. However, in spite of the goodwill which Viserys' accession had brought upon the Seven Kingdoms, the issue of succession still loomed large in the minds of those at court. Although Queen Aemma had borne the young king a son, the boy would die in infancy, which left Viserys with only his 6-year-old daughter Rhaenyra upon his ascension to the throne. Princess Rhaenyra served as her royal father's cupbearer from the age of 8, and drew the love of the court to the extent that she was dubbed the realm's delight. While it was presumed that the crown would one day lay upon the white-haired Rhaenyra's head, there was a Daemon-sized shadow lying upon the entire affair. Daemon Targaryen was a man best summarized through the words of the chronicler Archmaester Gildain, who remarks that, "Over the centuries, House Targaryen has produced both great men and monsters. Prince Daemon was both. In his day, there was not a man so admired, so beloved, and so reviled in all of Westeros. He was made of light and darkness in equal parts. To some he was a hero, to others the blackest of villains." Daemon had long been a spirited and rebellious young man. Knighted by King Jaehaerys and awarded the Valyrian steel blade Dark Sister, he had, since 97 AC, been unhappily married to Lady Rhaenyra, whom he referred to as the Bronze Bitch. Daemon was many things, but it could never be said that he did not dearly love his brother. During the Great Council, it was rumoured that Corlys Velaryon had assembled a fleet in order to defend the rights of his son Laenor. In response, the rogue prince readied a small army composed of a ragtag assortment of men-at-arms and sworn swords, though thankfully in that instance a civil war was averted. However, his love for his brother was matched only by his ambition and lust for power, as Daemon considered himself to be the heir apparent of the realm, and long wished to assume the title of Prince of Dragonstone. Although Viserys loved his brother, he could foresee no more chaotic outcome for his kingdom than the ascension of Daemon to the throne, and hoped that his queen would yet provide him with another male heir. To placate his maverick of a brother, Viserys appointed Daemon to the small council. However, this only led to the establishment of an intense rivalry between Daemon and the Hand of the King, Sir Otto Hightower. Otto was intelligent and cunning in equal measure, with an ambition to match his lofty opinions of himself. The rivalry which emerged between the two diametrically opposed forces within the small council forced Viserys to act, and in early 104 AC, Daemon was appointed to the role of Commander of the City Watch. This was not a perfect solution, as it granted Daemon a private army of some 2,000 men who were utterly loyal to the Rogue Prince and the Rogue Prince alone. Otto Hightower watched on in dismay as Daemon strengthened his position, harbouring the same fear as Viserys that Daemon would make a disastrous king. Indeed, no love was lost between Lord Hightower and the man who had been nicknamed Lord Fleabottom due to his less than savoury actions as commander of the City Watch. As such, Otto called upon his king to officially name Rhaenyra as his heir. Viserys rejected this proposal, maintaining faith that he would yet have a son. Lo and behold, the Seven answered the wishes of the king, and Aemma became pregnant, much to the kindly Viserys' delight. However, this joy soon turned to ash in his mouth, as in 105 AC, Aemma died in what was a brutal labour, although the babe survived. Viserys would name the child Balon after his late father, Balon the Brave. Unfortunately, the child only survived a day longer than his mother. As his brother suffered through the darkest moment of his life, Daemon enjoyed his revels in a brothel upon the Street of Silk. It was there, surrounded by all the debauchery King's Landing had to offer, that Daemon issued the infamous line that his nephew Balon had been naught more than the heir for the day, much to the delight of his drunken comrades. Unbeknownst to the drunken prince, these careless words would have immense consequences for the House of the Dragon and the realm at large. The grief of the kindly and peace-loving Viserys soon turned to rage upon hearing of his brother's drunken response to his son's death. Once the mourning period had ended, Viserys ensured, at least in his own mind, that the succession would be an orderly affair, and in so doing, prevent Daemon from ascending to the Iron Throne. A lavish ceremony was hosted in 105 AC, where the young king declared Rhaenyra as his heir, and the Princess of Dragonstone. At this ceremony, hundreds of lords and landed knights paid homage to the newly declared heir to the kingdom, and swore solemn oaths to defend her rights of succession. Daemon responded characteristically by leaving the capital in a black fury. From here on out, the king would groom his daughter to be a competent and caring monarch, making her a part of his small council in the process. However, Viserys was still only a man of some 30 years, and before long, Grand Maester Rinsiter had urged him to consider remarrying. The suggestion of Rinsiter was Laena Velaryon, which would have been a wise choice, effectively healing the rift between King's Landing and Driftmark, sown during the Great Council of 101 AC. Viserys instead made a decision which was to have ramifications for generations to come, choosing to marry the 18-year-old Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King. The pair were duly married in 106 AC, and during the ceremony, Rhaenyra acted as cupbearer. Queen Alicent kissed the heir and named her as her daughter, highlighting the unity of the family to all who refused to scratch beneath the surface of the festering wounds which lay at the core of the House of the Dragon. Once the news reached Prince Daemon, he almost whipped the messenger to death. Daemon's opinions towards his brother had already begun to harden, as when he had moved his pregnant mistress to Dragonstone, he had taken with him a dragon egg. Viserys had demanded the dragon egg be sent back to King's Landing, and for Daemon to return to his lawful wife in the Vale. This caused Daemon to send his mistress, Mysaria, to Lys. However, her ship inadvertently sailed through a storm in the Narrow Sea, and the child was lost, further blotting the relationship between the brothers. The wedding, in conjunction with the perceived slight caused by the succession and the loss of his child, drove the rogue prince into the waiting arms of the Velaryons. Corlys Velaryon, the Lord of the Tides, invited Daemon and his mighty mount Caraxes to join in his efforts in a conflict known as the War for the Stepstones. Back in 96 AC, the Triarchy, composed of the cities of Lys, Myr and Tyrosh, had decided to invade the Stepstones. They did so ostensibly in order to bring low the outlaws and pirates who made these islands their home, and preyed upon all ships who attempted to pass unmolested. Although the Seven Kingdoms were initially grateful for the destruction of the pirates, they soon grew to resent the heavy toll imposed on trade within the Narrow Sea by the Triarchy. Foremost among the aggrieved was Corlys Velaryon, whose seat, Driftmark, relied heavily upon the trade which passed through this region. It was therefore decided that war was to be waged against the Triarchy for control of the so-called Three Daughters. Corlys would command the mighty Velaryon fleet, while Daemon would lead an army of landless adventurers, second sons, sellswords and cutthroats from atop the fearsome dragon Caraxes. The invasion began in 106 AC, when the rogue prince began his brutal campaign upon the Stepstones, raining fire down upon the forces of the free cities. Despite the fact the Triarchy could bring to bear a far larger force, the joint Velaryon and Targaryen force inflicted a string of heavy defeats upon the armies of the free cities for 2 years. In 108 AC, Daemon dealt a crushing blow to the Triarchy when he plunged Dark Sister deep into the heart of the Prince Admiral of Myr, Kragas Drahar, also known as Kragas Crabfeeder. Back in King's Landing, Viserys continued to support his brother by providing the campaign with gold. By the year 109 AC, the combined Targaryen and Velaryon forces controlled all but 2 of the Stepstones, as the Sea Snake had achieved virtually uncontested naval dominance. It is at this point Daemon assumed the grandiose title of King of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, with a crown bestowed upon him by Corlys. In 110 AC, however, the Triarchy counterattacked, alongside their newly acquired Dornish allies, under the cunning Taroshi Captain General Recalio Rindoon. Fighting would continue into 111 AC, during which time Daemon struggled to defend his new kingdom, which was proving to be more trouble than it was worth. During this period, Daemon would return to court in King's Landing for a period of 6 months, and during this brief interlude, he was reconciled with his brother. However, prior to his return, the situation in King's Landing had become less than idyllic. Queen Alicent had borne a son named Aegon in 107 AC, a daughter Helena in 109 AC, and another son named Aemond in 110 AC. Yet despite this, or perhaps because of it, the relationship between Queen Alicent and Princess Rhaenyra had disintegrated. The two women strove to be considered the first ladies of the kingdom, a matter further compounded by the succession. However, although Daemon was for once overshadowed, for on that day, the Queen wore a long flowing green dress, while Princess Rhaenyra wore the Targaryen colours of black and red, and eventually went too far, getting himself exiled back to Old Town, with Lionel Strong of Harrenhal taking his place. Two distinct parties began to emerge at court due to the squabbles of Queen Alicent and Rhaenyra. Alicent's faction was primarily composed of powerful lords, friendly to the Queen and her father, and the former Hand, all of which supported the rights of her son in succession. The party's counterpoint in Rhaenyra's faction was composed mainly of those who had years ago sworn an oath to defend Rhaenyra's right to the crown. In 111 AC, a tourney was held in celebration of the 5-year anniversary of the king's second marriage. This tourney marked the return to court of the rogue Prince Daemon after his self-imposed exile upon the Stepstones. However, Daemon was for once overshadowed, for on that day, the Queen wore a long flowing green dress, while Princess Rhaenyra wore the Targaryen colours of black and red. From that day forth, as the battle lines continued to be drawn, the party faithful to Queen Alicent became known as the Greens, and those who upheld the rights of Princess Rhaenyra became known as the Blacks. With this, the lines in the sand had been drawn, and unbeknownst to all involved, the fate of the kingdoms hung upon a knife's edge. In the next few episodes, we'll discuss the final days of peace in Westeros, and the outbreak of the Dance of Dragons proper. In the meantime, we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.